Hey, it's Chris Aiken from the Classic Metal Show. I want to invite you to be part of a big event that I'll be participating in. I will be appearing at the Western Reserve Book Festival at Hiram College on Saturday, June 21st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I will be participating in a reading from my book, Little Victories, A Tale of Divorce, Debauchery, and Finding Happiness, as well as a Q&A session and a panel discussion. I will have books on hand should anyone want to purchase one or get theirs signed. This event is free and open to the public. For more information on the Western Reserve Book Festival, go to www.chrisaikenbooks.com/college or call Dave Everett at 330-569-5353. Come out, have some fun, and hang out at the Western Reserve Book Festival with me, Chris Aiken.
It's Tesla right here on your Classic Metal Show from the Psychotic Supper release. That is Edison's Medicine. Now, I didn't want to piss you off, Chris, but last week you made a proclamation that I shouldn't play a good song when you have to get back on the mic. So was this one of those situations where you might have been jamming out in the studio and you had to connect?
Absolutely was.
You were just like, fuck, this is a good song.
I like that song.
Of course, everybody
could have played anything from Fueler, and I'd have been fine with the connection.
Sure.
But, yeah, I like that song.
Of course you do. Kicks ass.
I love Tesla, man.
I do, too. I love Tesla. Give me 10 of your top 10 classic metal bands that you like.
Define the heaviest.
We'll go
in there. Pantera. Or no? No,
I'm going classic metal, kind of more melodic
type stuff.
More melodic rock, more instead of just like the screamo stuff, like.
Yeah. All right. 10?
Yeah, 10.
These are not in order.
No, it doesn't have to be in order. Just give me 10 bands that are just like your absolute favorite.
Listen to them all the time. LA Guns,
okay.
Love Hate, Guns N' Roses, Tesla, believe it or not, Winger, Judas Priest, would they count?
Yeah, absolutely.
Judas Priest, would Metal Church count?
Yep.
Metal Church? And you said Metallica does not count?
No, Metallica counts because they're melodic.
All right, then Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax.
Okay. That's a nice solid selection.
Right.
Obviously mine is Dokken.
Dokken would be up there too.
LA Guns, Tesla, Testament, Metal Church. Let's see who else. That's 5 of my top 5 right there.
Right.
Tesla, Cinderella. Let me see. Rat. I was on a Rat binge this afternoon.
Right.
Let's see who else that I really did. Oh, Wasp.
Wasp would be up there.
I'm big.
And I'm pulling my Winger pick. We're naming too many bands that I like better than Winger.
Love Megadeth. But anything that's, hard melodic rock, more or less.
Oh, that stuff's good.
Testament. Did I say Testament already? Yeah, I said Testament.
Not Odin.
No. Hail and Kill Caller, you're on the air.
Can I play two?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is a sort of idiotic list that I make up when I'm bored.
Kicks.
No.
Why aren't you at the M3 tonight there, Doghouse? It's not far from your place, is it?
It's about 2 hours away.
Yeah, okay.
I looked at the list and I thought, there's a few bands I like here, and then just not enough to warrant me going there.
I'll agree. I didn't think the M3 this year was as strong as the last year.
Yeah, I went to the one in, I guess it was 2009 or 2010 and had a blast. It was the one that YNT was at, and they were fantastic.
Yeah, YNT's good.
But, all right, my list of 10.
All right, go ahead.
Skid Row, LA Guns, Tesla, Jackal, Kicks. Yes, Kicks. Did I say Cinderella?
Not yet.
Okay, that's 6. Does Pantera count?
Well, I kind of put them in the newer rock vein.
Okay, they're borderline. Okay, we'll leave them out. Priest, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody likes Priest.
Sure.
Queensryche?
God damn, that's 7.
Queensryche?
No.
Tesla, LA Guns, Dokken, Rat.
I gotta say, I'm not gonna put Dokken on mine. I like Dokken, but they're not in my top 10. Sorry. Shit. How about AC/DC?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's 8.
There are 2 weird ones in there
These
just to throw it off. Cats and Boots.
I thought you would have come more prepared since you made the phone call. Jesus Christ, really?
I didn't have the list right in front. Guns N' Roses, based on the strength of Appetite for Destruction only.
Sure.
That's almost with an asterisk next to them. And the wild card, which is any band that I'm particularly high on at any given time.
Cats and Boots.
Sweet F.A.
No. Not Cats and Boots, and not Nevada Beach, and not
Bang Toy
Hurricane
69.
Alice.
Roxy,
Hey, how about Chick Tracy?
Roxy Blue. Big Bang Babies.
Big Bang, baby.
Pretty Boy Floyd.
Bullet
Queen
Boys.
Street.
Yeah.
McQueen Street.
Nothing wrong with McQueen Street.
Yeah, I know Chris liked their second one.
I love the second one. White Junk Monkey.
That was good.
Song rocks.
I think that was like one of the first interviews that the Classic Metal Show did for when we went to strictly internet only.
Yep.
Hey, you know who was a cool band that only put out one album, I guess? They weren't even really metal, but they kind of got lumped in. White Trash.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, just the Apple Pie and
I
song
have
is cool,
that.
but the whole disc is kind of, it's
Yeah.
just a party record, you know?
Sure.
It's not
disc
really
is fun.
metal,
That's
but
a good disc.
It's funky, man. It's kinda-
yeah, it's funky, man. They got the funk going on.
They do.
Man.
They really do.
The horns and the slap bass and the funky beats, and it's just you just put on and it makes you want to party.
Kind of like the Bloodhound Gang.
Except good.
Uh,
Bloodhound Gang was not good at all. Kind of like
no,
the Offspring, maybe.
well, I got a sort of a soft spot for them, but
Same
I don't
basic
know.
type of a premise of just kind of a silly band that was like, they're okay.
King of the
yeah,
Hill.
yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, the same ethos, if you will, if I may use a Tate word there, ethos.
Wow.
Jeff's really rubbing off on you.
That's disgusting.
That's
Rubbing off on me. God.
That's almost a Walter.
Stand the hell away from you, Christopher.
That's almost a Walter word from Big Lebowski.
I guess so. All right, that's it.
All right, fair enough.
Fuck you, pal.
I don't care, man. I lived through the 80s, and that was the best decade ever, in my opinion. My opinion. Doesn't mean...
I love that decade. I'd be hard-pressed with the 70s, though. I'm a little bit... And it's weird that you're older than me, but I like the 70s.
Yeah, but I think that's influenced through your mother.
Yeah, could very well be that, too. But, I mean, I still listen to that. I listen to all of it. But to say that the 80s was the best... Now, I love the hair metal era. I love that era. I mean, I truly... You know that. I do. But the rest of the music was so bad in the 80s.
Well, the only reason that stands out for me is that was sort of like the growing period for me, and because I had gotten into being a club disc jockey, and MTV was so big, and I was just that age, and you're a few years younger than me.
Yeah. Well, I think I just look at I'm looking at the metal was great, the hard rock was great. And you could say that for either the 70s or the 80s. But then when you come to the pop era, the lighter songs,
sure,
the 70s destroys. Come on, dude. Duran.
Well, I'm only gonna go. This is what I base my personal thoughts on.
Yeah. Is
that I lived in L.A. between 85 and 91.
Okay.
And there were so many great venues. There was the Irvine Amphitheater, Pacific Amphitheater. There was the, the Hollywood scene. There was the Whiskey, the Roxy, the Gazzaris.
But see, you were a scene guy, though.
Yeah. But I went to the live shows. I went to the Coach House, and I went to, I just went to all the venues. I went to the LA Forum, and I went to the LA Sports Arena. And I mean, I saw so many shows over that period of time that was just a huge time for me personally for live music.
Right.
I was such a junkie for live music that I went to so many arena style shows, and it didn't all had to do with hard rock. I went to a lot of hard rock shows,
sure,
but I went to some pop shows too. And and I've said this on the show that my guilty pleasure is I love the Bangles.
Oh yeah,
and I went to see them twice.
Nice.
And I had good seats for that too.
So they escorted you out for pounding on your dick.
But here's the funny thing: is that Cher Pedersen, or not Cher Pedersen, what am I saying?
That's band.
Yeah, that's Vixen. Debbie Peterson, rather.
Yeah.
She literally lived near me.
Wow.
And I would see her at the mall.
Really?
Yeah, literally I would see her at the mall.
No kidding.
So she lived in Wrightwood, California, and I would see her at the mall. So seeing her at the mall was not a big deal.
Right.
I would see her walking through the mall with her boyfriend.
If you saw her walking with Susanna Hoff, she'd have raped her.
Yeah, I didn't see Susanna, but regardless of that, so going to a lot of live shows back then was a big deal for me. So that's why me personally, for the music thing, being a DJ in the club and going to a lot of live shows and stuff, that was huge.
And see, for me, because my mom was locked in with tickets and whatnot, I was going to concerts really as long as I can remember. I mean, my very first concert was like 1975.
Okay.
It's like 7. I went to see Captain and Tennille with my parents.
Well, see,
so I grew up kind of in, and I saw the Eagles, I saw Zeppelin, I saw, all those bands back in the 70s, and I just kept right on going to shows.
Right.
And I mean, when I was in California was in the very end of the 80s, like 89, I think, from 89 to 92. And that's right when the change happened.
Right.
So, I was going to shows and I was seeing, I went and saw AC/DC and Priest and Guns N' Roses and Skid Row and all that shit. But I think that was the period of time for me when I really discovered that I liked club shows better than big shows.
Sure.
And I'm still like that. I'd much rather go to a 300 seat show than a 30,000 seat show.
Right.
And I think I got that from the late 80s when I used to hang out at the Omni.
Right.
And just see cool shows. So,
well, see, the thing is that I was brought up in a very conservative religious household where, quote unquote, decadent music was not accepted.
Right.
So I didn't get to go to shows as a teenager. Well, until I was 18.
Hey, man, you're older than my ex-wife, aren't you?
Well, regardless of that.
I see. How did she end up being your mom?
Right. That was just not something that you could do.
No, I get that.
So until after I was 18, I didn't get to actually go to concerts or stuff like that.
Right.
And then I moved to California when I was 20.
And then it was on.
Yeah. And, having so many venues available to you, you could go to a concert every night of the week if you wanted to.
Sure.
Because there were so many venues going on at that time. It was crazy. LA is just huge at the time anyway.
And you add into that, that's when every one of these bands were hitting.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what would seem like a big show now, would be going to see Wasp on a Tuesday night, would be normal.
Sure, it would
that would be just, all right, well, that's where they're playing. They're playing Tuesday night at, Gazzari's or wherever.
Exactly.
And yeah, it was a different vibe. There's no question about that.
So, and the thing is that they had, in your area, there's 2, well, maybe 3 main concert places. You either go to Blossom Music Center, Nautica Stage,
right, or the Gund or Q or whatever.
The Q or the Gund or whatever. And what do they call that place down there? they were calling it, what's that place down there? Just
Wolstein Center?
No, the outdoor place, Tower City, whatever.
It's gone now.
Oh, is it?
Yep, that's gone.
Really?
Yep.
When did that go away?
2 years ago.
Okay, see, that's how long it's been since I've been there.
That place sucked a dick.
Well,
anyway.
regardless of that, it was still a fairly large venue.
Yeah, it was a 10,000 seat.
Okay. So in Cleveland, you either had the Gund Arena, or at the time it was the Coliseum.
Richfield Coliseum, sure.
You had Nautica Stage or Blossom Music Center.
Right.
You had three major places to go see shows.
Sure.
In L.A., you could go to the Forum. You could go to the L.A. Sports Arena, Irvine Meadows, Pacific Amphitheater.
Right.
Then you could go to the second tier venues, which was like the Coach House, or go to
what was that bowl too? The something bowl.
Oh yeah, the Hollywood Bowl.
Hollywood Bowl.
You could go there. So there was like 6 or 8 places you could go any night of the week to go see a national show.
Right. Sure.
So shows were just plentiful, especially in LA, and especially year round because of the weather.
Right.
So you could go to an outdoor show in the late fall or early spring, and it was okay because the weather was so nice.
Right.
So that's why it was so plentiful to go to a show where in northeastern Ohio, the concert season is basically May through October.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And I mean, and really, I probably wouldn't have been into it as much as I was, except that I had a lot of access. Yeah. And I think that's what made me so into it, where a lot of my friends were not.
Right.
Was I had this I'm fucking 7, 8 years old, and I, was meeting rock stars.
Sure.
From the time I was little. Who the first rock star was? And it's ironic that this segment is coming. First rock star, first famous musician I ever met was Harry Chapin.
You actually met Harry?
I met Harry.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
My mom wanted to meet him and get an autograph, and I was with her. And we walked all the way down to the stage at Blossom after his show, and he was just sitting on the side of the stage signing autographs.
Right.
And I was there, and he gave me, "Oh, what's your name, son?" I was like 8.
Oh, look at you.
But yeah, I actually met Harry at one point.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I always had access to this kind of shit.
Sure.
And and I mean, I got to see. At the time, you don't think about it. I'm sure even for you right now, when some of these shows that you saw at the time, you didn't think nothing of it. You're like, all right, that's a good show or whatever. And then it becomes like this legendary thing.
Right.
Like for me, I was at what became known as Destroyer, which was Led Zeppelin in 77 at the Richfield Coliseum. And I don't know if it's like the most famous Led Zeppelin bootleg out there.
Right.
And I was at that show.
Sure.
I was there for that, and I was at the Day on the Green with Metallica in 91, with Metallica and Queensryche and Faith No More and Soundgarden. And that's become, one of the most legendary Metallica shows of all time, with 3 hours played. It's featured in the Year and a Half video. It was on MTV. It was this big thing. So I think your memories of this stuff get bigger as you get older, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It's kind of cool how that works.
Well, I just yesterday I was telling a coworker about my encounter with Evel Knievel.
Right. Okay.
And that happened back in '89.
Right.
So that was over 20 some years ago.
Sure.
But I remember that like that happened yesterday. Because it was such a big monumental thing for me as a fan and as a kid and somebody who had so much influence on my, younger years.
Right. Was that the biggest, I know it's not the biggest star you've met necessarily, but in your life?
In my life, that's probably
to your life. Was that the
biggest?
Definitely
one of the top 2.
Right.
Easily. Just because of my admiration and, just because I grew up watching Wide World of Sports and seeing Evel Knievel and meeting him in person and, you know, being able to just sit there and talk to him. It was just like, wow, this is Evel Knievel.
Right. I think I have two, and I don't know that I could narrow these two, but my one would be the first time I met the Metallica guys, just because, I mean, you know, I'm such a fucking fan. And I literally, the first time I met them was in their dressing room hanging out. You know, It wasn't even like a shake hands.
Yeah. It was sort of like you were part of the group there.
Yeah, it was so cool. And I just, you know, sat and talked to them and, you know, and that was cool. And the other one was, God, I was a young kid. But I forget what it was, one of these wrestling things. And it was here in Cleveland, like SummerSlam or something. And I met Vince McMahon.
Sure.
And I was like, wow, you know, I'm meeting the owner of this company.
Right. I was going to say that I thought you were going to say the Dee Snider thing was pretty big.
Dee Snider was a very big thing, too. That's probably one of the most influential things on me, that the guy actually told me that he'd send me a bunch of shit, and he did. You know, that was like the coolest thing ever, you know. And that was like 84, I guess 83, 84, whatever. Whenever Stay Hungry would have been on tour.
Mm-hmm.
It was with Dokken.
Right.
Dokken, Big Bamboo. And,
yeah, I actually have that poster on my wall here.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great show, but you know, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again real fast. Had backstage passes. I was with my mom. Had backstage passes to meet Twisted Sister. Had us all in line. Everybody signing shit. D runs out of marker or whatever, so he stops signing shit. I was like, I must have looked like I was about to cry. That I wasn't going to get my fucking picture taken with him, or my my album jacket signed.
Sure.
And D walked over to me, and he looked at me, and he pointed me to his guy, and he said, "You go tell that guy your address, and I'll send you an autographed picture."
Right.
And I was like, okay, you know, and I went over and I told the guy my address and stuff, and he wrote it down, and that was it. And, you know, then we left. And, you know, you don't really think I was a little kid in 84. I was 13, 14, whatever. And, you know, I didn't think anything about it. And then like a month and a half later, whatever it was, I get this giant box in the mail, and I open the box, and it's literally everything you could ever think of. It's Twisted Sister shirts and hats and autographed pictures and, you know, all this bullshit, all this Twisted Sister stuff.
Do you have any of that stuff today?
Oh, I most certainly do.
Really? Nice.
I most certainly do. I never wore the hat. I still have the hat. It's in pristine condition. It's never been on my head.
Sure.
And I have the note that says, "See, I'm good to my word." And I still have the note. It is signed D.
Nice. Good for you.
No, and I kept that shit all these years. And, you know, that's at my mom's. I should go get, you know what? Next time I go over to my mom's, I'll get the hat, and I'll get the note, and I'll put pictures of it up on Facebook. But nice. Yeah, it was a cool moment. And it's been, you know, you're aware. I told D the story.
Sure.
And he remembered, which was funny because I can't imagine he was sending boxes of shit to fucking kids in every city or anything. But, you know, he remembered that, and it's been cool that as he's done, you know, as his career, I don't want to say went down, but it's not what it used to be, you know, and I've been in the media where I could kind of give back, you know, kind of help him promote. And you know me, I've promoted everything D's done. Whether it was Widowmaker, whether it was the movie Strangeland, you know, anything, I've always been willing to, because that guy gave to me when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
It's like, you know, it's just cool. It's funny how that works.
I agree. Well, my meeting with my first time meeting Don Dokken and becoming friends with him was over a Sharpie.
Really? I don't know this story.
You know, I was such a huge fan of Dokken through the 80s, and they broke up in 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Right.
And I was still living in LA, and Don had branched out to do his solo Don Dokken thing.
Right.
And KLOS was running a contest Have Lunch with Don Dokken.
Okay.
They were promoting this Up From the Ashes CD, Win Lunch with Don Dokken. And you had to enter this contest and stuff. So I'd heard this on the radio. And so I went ahead and entered the contest, hoping I would win.
Sure.
Well, I didn't win the contest, but so Dokken came back in 85 or 84 rather.
Okay.
But they toured in 85 for Dysfunctional.
Sure.
Well, I was driving a
5. 95.
That's what did I say? 85?
85.
Okay, 94, 95.
Okay.
So I was driving a truck at the time, and I was coming through Toledo one day, and I was listening to the local rock station in Toledo, and they said, "Hey, Dokken is coming to a club here called Roxanne's."
Okay.
So as soon as I got home, I checked it out. I see where Roxanne's is and find out that they weren't selling tickets like through Ticketmaster or anything, and they were selling it just through the club.
Okay.
So I called the club and I said, "Hey, I'm from out of town. I want to see Dokken. How do I get tickets?"
Right.
Well, it happened to be the club owner that answered the phone.
Okay.
And he said, "Well, if you're coming from out of town, I can hold a couple tickets for you. Just give me your name. I'll leave them at the door. Just pay for them when you get to the door."
Okay.
So I drove to Toledo with my chick at the time, and we went there and we got there a little early. Well, we were sitting out in front of the club. It was like, an hour or two before the show. Well, this pickup truck pulls up and Mick Brown comes out of the truck.
Okay.
And I'm just like, I've got, there's Mick Brown, And my chick, she had no idea. She was just not a Dokken fan. Right. So I got out and I walk over to Mick and I'm just like, "Hey, Mick, what's up?" And he's just like, "Hey, how you doing? Who are you? What are you from?" And all this kind of stuff. And just kind of chit-chatting with him for a few minutes. Well, anyway, long story short, went to the show. Show was great. I was leaving the show, coming out the door, and that club owner was there, and he was the one who was working the door when I came in, and he said to me, he says, "Hey, how did you enjoy the show?" I said, "It was really good." And he was walking out at the time.
Right.
And he says, "Where did you say you came from?" And I said, "Yeah, I drove over here from Akron, which is a little over 2 hours away."
Sure.
And so I just was walking with him as he was talking. He was walking around the back side of the club and going back to the back side of the club where the tour bus was parked.
Right, sure.
And I had my Tooth and Nail CD with me, and I had a couple of Sharpies with me. And we went past his security guards there because I was with the club owner, and they didn't ask me who I was or anything. So I just walked with him.
Right.
Past the security, and he goes, "Hey, I got to go take care of some stuff. Nice meeting you. Glad you could make the show, blah, blah, blah."
Right, okay.
So there was like maybe 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen people hanging around the tour bus, and Jeff came out and George came out, and they were signing autographs and stuff. There was just, like I said, there was only 6 people there and myself.
Right.
So then Don came out, and he was with Teresa.
Okay.
You remember Teresa?
I certainly do.
Okay, so this, mind you, this was 94.
Yep.
So this was, 20 years ago.
Yep.
So, he comes out, and he's with Teresa, and he walks her out, and people are saying, "Hey, Don, can I get an autograph?" He goes, hey, hang out. I'm just got to say goodbye to somebody here because they're leaving.
Right.
So he walks out away from the bus and everybody and tells her goodbye, and she leaves. He comes back. Now, you know how some fans are. They're hanging out there. They've got scraps of paper and a ballpoint pen and a dollar bill or whatever it is that they want him to sign. And he's like trying to sign shit with a ballpoint pen. He's like, "Doesn't anybody have a Sharpie?"
Right.
And I had a couple with me, and I said, "Hey, Don, I got a couple Sharpies here. I'll give them to you if you give me a couple minutes."
Right.
So he says, "Yeah, sure." So he puts his arm around me, and we walk away from everybody. He goes, "What's up?" Now, this was when I was going to go to broadcasting school. I was about a month away from going into broadcasting school.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, I was living in L.A., and I wanted, you were doing this whole thing with KLOS, and you were, doing this Have Lunch with Don Dokken thing, and I entered that contest, and, I always wanted to meet you, and I've been a fan, and, so on and so forth. And
Yeah,
he's
all
like,
right.
hey, it's cool to meet you. And I said, so I'm going to go to broadcasting school. I want to do a show that's kind of like a variety type show. And, I want to kind of feature some of the bands that don't get any airplay these days. And, Dawkins, one of my favorite bands, and I kind of want to do, promote you guys and whatever. And he's just like, hey, that's cool. He says, great. He says, I appreciate that. He says, you know what? Do me a favor. Keep in touch with me.
Okay.
And he says, I'll give you my contact info and stuff. And he gave me his contact info and signed my CDs and stuff. And I gave him the Sharpies, and I went on about my business.
Right.
And that's how I met Don.
Oh, shit, but you kept in touch.
Yeah, we kept in touch, and, we've been friends ever since.
Isn't it weird how, all when we were young, these guys were untouchables.
Right.
It was like, oh, man, maybe I'll get to say hello.
Sure.
And then when you meet them, they're all just dudes. They're all just guys.
But I'll never forget, and since we're talking about Rat tonight,
Yeah.
what was really weird is when Erase the Slate came out.
Uh-huh.
They were on CMC, and they were trying to do what they call a grassroots promotional program, where they were trying to get the fans to do what they call a street team.
Right, sure.
And it was being run by a guy who was running the street team, and they were sending you these little handbill type things that they wanted you to go to the concerts and hand these things out to anybody at concerts and stuff.
Sure.
And I had gone in, since I had the radio show, I was on STB at the time.
Right.
I had access to a lot of the shows at Nautica and Blossom and whatever, and so I had like hundreds of these things.
Right.
So I was standing at the gate for various concerts through the summer, and I was handing these things out to everybody who walked through the gate, and I was literally going through hundreds.
Right.
And I would order these things about every month, every other week. I would say, hey, I need, a couple hundred more of these.
Right.
So the guy who was running the street team, he's just like, wow, I can't believe you're going through so many of these little handbills, which was basically promoting Erase the Slate.
Right.
He says, you really seem to be into this. He says, I'm not really into running this whole dock and street team thing. He says, would you be interested in running it? And I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he says, well, I'm going to talk to the people at CMC, this Tom Lipsky.
Yeah.
And see if he'd be interested in letting you take over the street team.
Okay.
So he called me up a few days, and he said, yeah, he says, if you want to take over the street team, you're more than welcome to do it.
Nice.
Okay, so I took over the street team, and it was all email based and everything.
Right. Sure.
And I basically had to coordinate everybody's promotional materials and whatever. If anybody needed promotional materials and things, all they had to do was email me, and I would let the company know, and they would send it out to them.
Sure.
So it wasn't really a lot of time out of my day.
Right.
So I was at the Cleveland Agora seeing Rat.
Okay.
And it was like January. And I was outside, and I was talking to Stephen Piercy, and we were chit-chatting and stuff for a few minutes. And then I went home, and by the time I got home, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Just as I'm walking in the door of my apartment, my phone is ringing, my house phone. I had a house phone at the time.
Right.
And I'm just like, who the hell's calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning, I answer the phone, and it's like, Wendell? Just like, yeah? He goes, Don Dawkins. I'm just like,
really?
Yeah. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm just like, hi, Don. And he goes, I need to talk to you about some stuff.
All right.
And he was basically concerned about the promotion of Erase the Slate, and that the company wasn't getting enough CDs out to the local record stores and this and that. And he was going to have a meeting in Toledo, and he was going to have a PR firm behind them, and he wanted me to attend, and he wanted my ideas, and it was just crazy. And I was just like, holy shit.
When did I become part of this band?
Exactly. And that's how it started.
Nice.
And he's just like, yeah, we're playing in Columbus at the Alrosa Villa. Can you come down for that? I want to meet with you.
All right.
So I went down there, and sure as shit, we sat down and had a meeting and stuff, and it was just crazy.
It is.
And this guy just like accepted me into the fold, like I was one of them or something.
Well, me the same way. Dude, he didn't know me from anybody. You said, hey, he could do your website.
Yeah, I basically said, yeah, my partner's a webmaster. He could take over the Dockin website. And he says, give me his number.
And he called me up, and that was it. And then him and I almost, I mean, you remember, we had that period where we were talking every day.
Exactly.
Because we were really working on, when that solo record came out.
Solitary, yeah.
I had a lot to do with that, and I don't think we ever really talked about that very much.
Sure.
But I had a lot to do with that as far as running the store and, setting up the store and selling the shit. And I used to, my God, remember when that thing went on sale and I was just pissing off the fucking, the post office daily.
Yeah, you were taking literally,
400 or 500
bunch of envelopes there to be stamped every day.
Yeah, there was but on some of the days there was 400 or 500 at a time.
Right.
And it was I'd come in with these big boxes, and each fucking envelope had to be stamped with a postage and a tracking and all that other shit. And the post office was pissed off like a motherfucker at me.
Sure. And
especially, the third weekend. They were like, "Oh, what is wrong with you?" But between doing that and, from doing that, obviously me and Don had to trade a lot of money back and forth, to make that work right. And we got to where we were talking all the time, and, it got to be, and it's still like this every once in a while. I don't talk to Don as much as I used to, but every once in a while, Don will just call just to shoot the shit. He'll just call and, hey man, what's going on? What's going on in your crazy radio world? That's
right.
I don't know if he says the same thing to you.
Sure.
He calls it the crazy radio world.
Right.
Because he knows that we just do it different. And, he's good people, man.
Yeah.
But you would have never, in 1984, you never thought that we were going to be buds with this guy.
Not at all. Never.
I was happy to get good seats. I was happy to be able to see him. And now it's now it's like we make one phone call. That last show that we did here, that they did here in
Cleveland
at
the House of Blues.
I made one call, asked Don. I said, "Hey, I need passes for am I asking for too much if I bring 4 people or 5, whatever it was? I forget how many people we had." And he was like, "Nah, whatever." We showed up and we had what? We had wristbands, we had food certificates, drink certificates,
right?
Full access, all access passes to everywhere in the venue.
Well, what was funny is that you had contacted him about going to Oshkosh.
Yeah,
but they were playing at Rocklahoma, and
right.
He's like texting me. He says, "How many passes do you guys need? 10?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Aren't you guys coming to Rocklahoma? Because I got 10 passes set aside for you guys."
We're like,
I'm just like, "No, it's not Rocklahoma. It's Oshkosh." Oh, well, I told Fingers to put out 10 passes for you guys.
and I mean, even the thing with Oshkosh, anytime we've had a thing with Don, there's never been a hitch.
No.
And that's and to be fair, I'm gonna give all the credit to Fingers on that, because Fingers handles that and he's the man. And I know Don approves it and John as well, but Fingers is the man.
Sure.
I mean, Fingers makes Dockin go.
Right.
And he is just the nice. That's the weird thing too, dude, is this and I know this. Most tour managers have just a horrendous reputation. Most people hate the fucking tour manager.
Yeah.
Fingers, nicest guy in the world. Of every tour manager I've ever met. Mm-hmm. He's like the nicest.
Well, here's what's funny, and I know I've told this story before, but this one cracked me up. Well, I think it was last summer. I can't remember. I think it was early last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Dockin played at a place over here called the Cubby Bear,
right? Which
is over near the Cubs Stadium over Wrigley Field.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to play Alone Again,
Right.
And the keyboards were off stage.
Okay.
And Fingers plays the keyboard part for Alone Again.
Okay.
And he went, and it was roped off. The keyboard thing was roped off because it was side stage.
Right.
So that portion of the show came up where he had to go play the keyboard part.
Sure.
And I was just hanging out, because I was with Dawn earlier in the day, and we were just kind of hanging out. I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And Fingers went under the little roped off area to go play the keyboards, and the security stopped him.
Right.
And wouldn't let him get to the keyboards because they
Right.
thought he was like some kind of overzealous fan or something.
Right.
And the security had to come to me to verify that he was the tour manager. How funny is that?
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, it's just like, dude, I'm not anybody. I'm just kind of hanging out here. But
I'm the one you should be throwing off the stage.
Yeah, but the security came to me to ask me if he was okay.
But you know what? You always look like you belong there.
Yeah, that's the weirdest damn thing, too.
But you do. I mean, you kind of got the look of tour manager guy. You look like a tour guy.
Yeah, so the security is just like stopping him, and he's trying to get to the keyboard because they're getting to the point to where they need him to play.
Right.
And they wouldn't let him to the keyboard, and the security comes over to me asking me if he's okay.
Sure. Well, dude, it's just like in Oshkosh where the guy just came up and handed you Don's money.
Yeah, he handed me Don's check for the night.
Here's 25 grand or whatever the fuck it was. I don't remember what it was, but it was some large check to just hand to anybody. And he just was like, here you go. Give this to Don.
Here's Doc and settlement.
Yeah, here's Doc and settlement. Give this to Don.
Right.
I was like, who the fuck are you?
Who the fuck are you, shitwad?
You could have easily said, you know what, I'm going to scribble a name on the back of this and fucking buy a car to get home.
Right.
And Jesus. But too funny.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.